be either behind those two sensors, one or the other. Not every car, most cars will only have one of those. They're not going to have both. And then that's got a good amount of pressure, and the only way that you can tell that, again, is if you put the vacuum gauge. Once you've found a good vacuum line and you've got the canister on and you can adjust it, then the next thing is you look for a good spot for the canister to fit in the engine compartment, that you can keep it from getting too hot, that it's easy to take in and out for service, and it's accessible. And the last thing I look for under the engine is a place that I can put the go into where the wiring harness is going through the firewall and pass a few wires into the passenger compartment of the car. In some cases, and this happens to me all the time when I'm doing installs, I will not be able to find an easy place to go through the firewall. And in those cases, I just end up having to drill a little hole, and I'll put a little rubber grommet. You can pick them up at Radio Shack to protect that. The firewall is usually only a few millimeters of steel thick. You can drill a little hole and send the wires through there, but you need to be absolutely certain, completely careful that you know where that drill is going through on the other side. So be very careful if you have to drill through the firewall, and be prepared to get a rubber grommet that will protect those wires from the sharp edges of the steel on the firewall. That's really key and important. So having said that, those are the key elements that I look for when I'm doing an install: the vacuum line, the placement of the canister, and the position to bring the wiring harness and attach the wiring harness, send it through the firewall. Now after that, the rest of the installation procedure usually is carried forward into the interior of the car. So I'm going to come over and sit down and talk with the fellows, and we're going to mention a few things that we like to do. This little black box here is the unit that we use for the interior of the car.
So this connects with the wire you just ran through the firewall.
That's right. These wires all connect up, and then
with a little twisty.
You can use like little twist, or whatever works for you. Yeah, but we usually supply some little wire twist ties for that. Another thing that it was really important and interesting in the install procedure that I wanted to talk about. As Walter had mentioned before, we want to get a baseline number of the fuel trim before we put the hydrogen system in. Once we've completed the install, we've got the canister in, and in our system, I recommend that you fill the canister with distilled water. With our small system, you would put a 1/4 teaspoon of the citric acid. With the medium size, you would put a 1/2 teaspoon of the citric acid, and with the large size you would put a teaspoon of citric acid. And I'm going to tell you a few things about how citric acid works versus baking soda and some of the other electrolytes that you can use in the system. But we use distilled water and citric in our acid, but any of the electrolytes will work. So you've got it in the engine compartment and everything's hooked up. Then when you turn the car on and you press this button to the on position, there'll be a little red light on the button that comes on the dash, wherever you would like this to be, that will tell you that the system is being powered, that it's turned on. And if you look at the system underneath the hood of your car, there's a little green light on the top of the unit that basically comes on when the system comes on, so you know that the system is sending a charge and creating the hydroxy gas.
A clarification, I thought the red light here indicated that the canister was empty.
That's interesting. See,
I see. Oh, there are two red lights.
If you'll notice, there's a small red light on the switch.
I didn't notice that the first time.
That little red light on the switch is the power indicator. That tells you that it's on. This red light here tells you that the system is empty and it needs to be refilled. So yeah, that's a great, I'm glad you brought that up.
I didn't notice the switch had a light on it as well.
Pretty nifty, huh? You know what, and you can get these switches, if you want to do something like this, the wiring's very simple, and you can get these switches at Radio Shack or even online, you can purchase them. So if you're doing a kit yourself, it's a great idea, and you can get these sensors there's internet companies that will sell you these these sensors, and basically they go off and on depending on whether they float. So pretty basic setup, and you can get them on the internet. They're great. Okay, so once you get them in the car, and the car is running, and you know that you've got the system working, the lights are coming on, and everything's going. The next step to a really good install is to take the system analyzer out again, the computer scan tool. And like I said, I got this one at Sears, but you can get them at AutoZone or Checker Auto. Let's see, Napa probably carries. And then there's a host of different companies that sell these units on the internet for different prices. I think you can get them on, I don't know, eBay and other places for a great price. I got this one at Sears because Craftsman has their money-back guarantee, and Craftsman makes a good tool for a reasonable price. But you can totally, there's a ton of different ones you can use. And what I do is I'll hook it up to the system, to the car, and usually you'll find on the cars that are, correct me if I'm wrong, Walter, but isn't it 1996 and newer, 98 and newer?
Yeah, around there, OBD2.
So back in the day, they had the onboard diagnostic computer. They called it the OBD computer system. And then around 1996, I saw a 1998 Toyota truck the other day that was OBD1.
Okay.
So they kind of transitioned, and they'll have a variety of different connectors that are required. And this system comes with different connectors, and many of the systems will come with different connectors that are required to use them on different cars for the OBD1. The great thing is, though, like I was saying, around 1998, around that time, they all started going to what is now called the OBD2. And all of the OBD2 systems use this same type of plug. And you'll find it underneath the dash somewhere, either on the passenger side, but most commonly I found it underneath the driver's side. Although, Brent, yours is
on
on
my car yesterday when we were testing it, it was on the passenger side.
And what is that? That's a 2000.
It's a 98.
98 Honda.
Yes.
Okay.
OBD2.
So that was like an early OBD2.
It would have been the first model for the
Yeah,
OBD2.
it's definitely an OBD2 though, because we were looking at it. And what I'll do is I'll hook it up to that, and we did do Brent's yesterday, and Brent's system was running very well. It was in the 0 to -1, -2.
2.3, yeah.
Yeah, it was running nice and lean. And that raised some perplexing questions, but we'll get into that another time. But the great thing is once we put the hydrogen system in, we can get another look at the fuel trim. And if the fuel trim is running nice and lean after we put the system in, then we know we've gotten out of the way of the sensors, and that we should expect that you're going to get some reasonably good results, somewhere around the 30% or better results with our hydrogen systems. Would that be your experience as well, Walter?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Okay, great. Walter, you're so articulate and full of things to say today.
I'm pretty quiet.
Well, we keep you around because you're the brains of the operation. That's the main reason we like to have you here. So, having said that, so it's a great idea. If you're going to put one of these systems in your vehicle, or you're going to be installing these in vehicles for people, I really highly recommend that you invest in one of these tools so that you can get a baseline and then get an adjustment. I want to thank everybody for coming. It's been great. You've been a great help, and we've really enjoyed our time.
Thank you for having us.
And most of all, I want to thank you for watching, and hope you'll join us next time when we talk about the different sensor issues and how to resolve and get good results. Is running nice and lean after we put the system in, then we know we've gotten out of the way of the sensors, and that we should expect that you're going to get some reasonably good